If you've ever taken care of a baby, you know how those quiet nights feel. The house breathes soft, you're half asleep, and every sound could mean everything. Now imagine this. Your baby monitor crackles, and through that static, you hear someone whisper your name. Not the baby, not your daughter, not anyone you know. Just your name, spoken by a voice that knows things it shouldn't. Tonight's true horror story is called The Voice Inside My Baby Monitor. It's about a grandmother who moved in to help her daughter and grandson, and found out she wasn't the only one watching the crib. If you're ready, turn off the lights, settle in, and make sure your own house is quiet. Because what she heard might be waiting on your frequency too. Mary Ann didn't feel old enough to be a grandmother, but the day she carried her suitcase up her daughter's front steps and smelled the warm, milky air of a house with a newborn, something inside her settled in like it had been waiting for this season all along. The living room was a maze of folded receiving blankets, tiny socks, and a baby swing that hummed like a distant highway. The baby's name was Owen, a heavy name for someone who still weighed less than a bowl of apples. She came to help for a month, maybe two, because Lily and Nate looked tired past the point of common advice. It wasn't that they were careless, they just weren't sleeping. The pediatrician talked about cluster feeding and growth spurts and schedules that didn't work yet. Mary Ann nodded, remembering all the old muscle memory from years ago when Lily was the one squeaking like a hinge in the night. On the first evening, when the house finally quieted and the three of them ate slices of cold pizza standing at the kitchen counter, Nathan handed Mary Ann a small handheld monitor. The plastic was smooth with a rubber lip around the edges, like a phone made for swimming. He showed her the screen with the soft grayscale view of the crib upstairs, the shape of a small person breathing under a swaddle. "You can adjust the sensitivity," he said. "It picks up breathing if you want it to. We keep the base unit upstairs. This one's portable." Mary Ann tested the volume and felt that little echo of authority she used to have when Lily was small. "Don't worry. Me and this thing, we're best friends already." It was a Thursday when it started. The day had been typical in a new baby way. A lot of talk about whether the diaper rash looked angrier or calmer. More coffee than anyone needed. A short walk to the corner and back because the air felt good. Lily went to bed early, and Nathan followed with the quiet guilt of new fathers who don't know what to do with themselves. Mary Ann washed the bottles, loaded the dishwasher, and moved around the kitchen like she had always lived there. The monitor sat on the counter, glowing. She liked how it felt to be useful again. Near midnight, her back ached the way it did when she had been on her feet too long. She turned off lights, leaving only the little lamp near the sink. The monitor hissed gently with that soft seashell sound the speakers make when they're listening hard. She filled the glass with water and leaned on the counter, looking at the gray box of the crib and the little oval of Owen's head. The room upstairs was quiet. The house itself seemed to be listening, waiting to see who would make the next move. A voice said her name. It was nothing loud, not even regular volume. It sounded like someone leaning into the monitor to keep a secret. It said, "Mary Ann," like a question and a memory put together. She had lived long enough to not jump. She set her water down and looked at the monitor like she was looking at a person. She said, without thinking, "That's not funny, Nate. Don't do that." The upstairs stayed gray and still. The soft seashell hiss continued. There was no rustling of sheets, no creak of floorboards. The voice had been close to the microphone. She could feel the closeness like warmth. She carried the monitor up the stairs with her pulse in her throat. She opened the nursery door with the same careful hand she had used when Lily was a baby. Owen slept in the crib with his mouth open and his chest rising in little steady lifts. The base unit on the dresser showed the same picture she held in her hand. A little blue light blinked. No one was in the room. The window was shut. The rocking chair sat by the curtain like a shadow with knees. She stepped back into the hallway and listened. A house has 100 mouths, vents and frames and water lines, and if you've lived in enough different places, you can tell what each mouth means. This house said nothing out of the ordinary. Marianne breathed once, twice, and told herself that these monitors picked up neighbors' baby monitors and trucker radios and garage door openers. She looked at the thermostat on the wall just because it was something to look at. She told herself what she would tell Lily if Lily were the one holding the little plastic screen. Interference. Downstairs, the monitor hissed softly again. She set it on the counter and poured the rest of the water down the sink like she had to empty the night out of it. When she went to the couch, she tucked a blanket around her knees and fell asleep to the cold glow of the screen. In the morning, she said nothing to Lily because Lily's cheeks were the pale kind of tired, and the coffee mug had 2 long fingerprints on it like a plea. Marianne held the baby. She sang him nothing songs from the radio. She let the whisper fall into the corners of her mind like a feather no one would notice. That night, after the house curled into itself again and the lights fell in dominoes down the hall, the monitor sat where it had the night before. The screen showed the familiar gray crib and the rolling rise and fall of little breaths. Marianne waited. The voice said, "Mari." Her sister had been the only person who called her that after high school. No one had used it since the funeral. That old nickname came through the speaker like a wire pulled tight. She stood up so fast the blanket slipped to the floor. Her heart said foolish, foolish, but she wasn't going to let her body boss her around like she was 90. She climbed the stairs with careful speed. In the nursery, the air felt slightly colder, or maybe she wanted it to. The base unit's blue light blinked in a steady rhythm like a sleeping heartbeat. She went to the crib, checked the swaddle, the flash of breath, the damp sweetness of baby skin. She glanced toward the rocking chair. For no reason she could explain, she moved the chair out from the window and turned it to face the door. It was such a small, silly action, but something about it made her feel as if she had blocked a view, or returned one. There. Now the chair was where it should be. She whispered, "We're fine, sweetheart," to the baby, and to herself she added, "You're 70% imagination and 30% bad radio." She took the monitor and made herself go back downstairs like a person who believes in consistent physical laws, like a woman who still knew the difference between air and voice. Later, while she folded onesies with little blue whales, she thought about whom she could tell. Her sister would have said, "Give the ghost a chair and a glass of water." Her sister had said things like that about everything. But her sister wasn't here to tease the fear into something you could laugh about. So Marianne told no one. She kept the fear like a hot stone she carried in her pocket, something to hold on to when she walked through the long stretches of ordinary. The third night, the voice didn't say her name. It hummed. The tune came out of the speaker like someone was holding it in their throat, too soft to share, too private to be caught. She knew it instantly. It was a little lullaby she made when Lily was a baby, something she had made up while washing dishes one late afternoon when the apartment was so hot the dishwater felt cool. She didn't remember singing it to anyone else. She had never told Lily it existed, not in any kind of real conversation. Lily couldn't have known to hum it. The voice hummed a broken line of it, stopped, and then sang two words without melody, the way you say two words to yourself when you're checking if they still fit. Sweet girl. Marianne set the monitor face down. She pressed the heels of her hands into her eyes until a harvest of purple lights rose like fruit. She could taste the old kitchen in the back of her mouth, the dish soap, the hard water, the little cheap radio with the dial slightly off. That kitchen had seen everything. It had seen the first time Lily laughed so hard milk ran out of her nose. It had seen her husband pack a bag. It had seen a plumber kneeling with his shoulders inside the sink cabinet, his cigarettes rolled in his sleeve, asking if she could hand him that little wrench. Life had a way of squeezing all the different times together until they were all the same temperature. She sat there with her eyes covered until the baby breathed a little louder and the monitor went back to being a tiny ocean on the counter. In the morning, Lily said, "Mom, are you okay? You look pale." "I didn't sleep great," Marianne said. "Old house plus new baby equals no sleep. It's a math thing." Lily smiled the way tired people do, as if they are borrowing it. "If you want, we can turn off the monitor downstairs. Maybe it's too much sound." "No," Marianne said too quickly. She softened her voice. "No, honey, I like to hear him breathe. It helps me relax." That afternoon, while Lily napped and Nathan ran errands on a Saturday schedule that was mostly wandering around the hardware store, Marianne took the monitor up to the nursery. She held it up, turned it right and left, and listened for any tooth of a sound. She put it next to the base unit, away from the crib. She turned the base unit down. She turned it up. She unplugged the base unit and plugged it back in. Every small act felt like arranging objects in a story you haven't yet admitted you were telling. She noticed something she had not noticed before. The nursery door only closed fully if you lifted it as you pulled. Otherwise, it caught on the carpet and sat ajar by 1.5 inches. Not a big enough gap to see into, but plenty of space for sound to slip out like a sheet. She worked the door a few times, up and down. "Good to know," she said. She was the sort of woman who believed in things like that. Hinges, good to know. But the belief felt like a ladder leaning on water. The fourth night, she slept on the couch with the monitor under her pillow like a teenager hiding a phone. Sometime after 2, she woke with the awareness of having been listened to. The voice said her name again. It said it in that almost pleasant way people at the grocery store say your name when they're not sure they remember you from church or from school pickup lines. She could tell it was smiling. She didn't know how she could tell, but she could. It said, "Marianne, you hear me now." She did not answer. She understood suddenly that not answering was a kind of power. She lay there very still and let the voice fill the tiny speaker and spill into the wool of the couch and the night air that had settled into the living room like cold tea. The voice said, "You told her you were fine." She clutched the pillow but did not speak. She wanted it to say more. She didn't want it to say anything again. The voice said, "You didn't say you brought the chair back." She must have made a sound, or maybe the couch complained, because upstairs the baby stirred and gave one of those soft warnings babies do when they are considering either sleep or protest. Marianne stood up and went to the bottom of the stairs. She forced herself to walk at a normal pace because no one ever wants to see an adult run into a room, even if that adult claims it's nothing. In the nursery, she found the chair again as she had left it, facing the door. The window reflected her. The base unit blinked. The baby settled. She stayed in the doorway a long time. She didn't go in. She didn't touch the chair. She felt like she was waiting for someone to cross a line. The line was invisible, and it might have been in her head, but lines like that are real enough. She thought of calling her sister's old number just to hear the voicemail. She thought of telling Lily. She thought of waking Nathan, and in the same thought she saw how he would glance at the monitor, set it down, and say something about signals and scanning, and how those things pick up all kinds of stuff. He would mean to help. He would suggest a new brand. He would install 3 other devices to make the first device behave. And every new thing would be another mouth and the mouth and the mouth and the mouth and the ethan. Instead, she went back to the couch and slept with the monitor under her pillow like a child hiding bad news. For a week, she didn't hear the voice again. She almost convinced herself that the night had bent the truth and that every ghost people talk about is just a certain kind of fatigue wearing a mask. She fell into the rhythm of the house. She held the baby at 5 in the morning and watched the black sky turn the color of a bruise and then, finally, something like a peach. She laughed with Lily when the baby made faces that looked like old men thinking about money. She began to feel like the woman she had before the voice, which is to say she began to forget she was someone else before now. Then the email arrived. It came to her phone in the late afternoon when the house had that afternap quiet that happens when your body knows it could sleep again if it wanted. The subject line was the name of the monitor brand, followed by a simple message, motion detected. Video available. She didn't remember signing up for notifications. She clicked anyway. The video was 12 seconds of the nursery. The camera had recorded what it thought was movement. She watched it 3 times before she saw the movement. It was nothing a person would notice normally. It was the rocker moving forward and back with the smallest range possible when something has only just touched it. The video didn't have sound. It didn't capture the creak. It simply showed the mathematical truth of an object changing position across frames. Her first thought wasn't horror. It was anger in a plain dress. If she had been in a different life, with a different set of choices, that video would have sent her down the hallway like a bullet. Instead, she set the phone down and stood in the kitchen breathing. She could feel her heartbeat in her teeth. The anger wasn't at a person. It was at whatever in the world had decided she was the right one to listen to, when what she wanted was to be the right one who slept. She deleted the app. She told herself it was because she didn't need videos. She had her eyes. She had the old kind of mothering that listened to a house by holding its hand. That night the voice said, "Don't ignore me." If a stranger on a street corner had said those words, she would have kept walking. If the words had arrived in a letter, she would have thrown it away. But this was a voice speaking through a device meant to extend your ear into a room where someone small slept. The words were inside duty, and duty makes everything holy. She said without meaning to, "What do you want?" It was strange how natural it felt to answer. It was like picking up a conversation you had set down with a friend and realizing you hadn't lost your place at all. The voice said, "You moved the chair. Put it back." She understood in the way a person does when they've been alive long enough to see how demand and request are the same mask. She went upstairs, went to the chair, and stood with her hand on the back. She waited. The room felt like a held breath. The baby slept, the tiny mouth making a shape between rose and plum. She moved the chair back toward the window and turned it so it faced the crib again. It wasn't anything like permission. It was more like a dare. "Fine. I'm fine. You want the window. You want to watch. Then watch me watching you." Back downstairs, she didn't pick up the monitor. She turned off the kitchen light. She stood in the dark and listened to the house think. After a while, the voice said, "Thank you." The words came out shaped like kindness, but there was no kindness in them. The next day, she told Lily a small version of the truth. "The monitor's picking up weird stuff," she said. "Might be neighbor signals. Might be the brand. Maybe we should try a different kind." Lily frowned. "It's new, Mom." "I know. Try a different app, maybe. Or I can turn it down at night." "Do what makes you comfortable," Lily said. Her voice had that new mother tone that can sound like distance when it's really just a person protecting the last square inch of her attention. Marianne tried turning the volume lower. She tried placing the monitor in different parts of the kitchen. She set it in the pantry once, as if putting it in a dark cupboard would teach it manners. The voice did not care about manners. The voice was patient. If she ignored it, it would simply sit like a cat and watch her until she forgot she was being watched. Then two things happened that pushed her from quiet negotiation to fear. The first thing was small. The voice used her maiden name. She hadn't spoken it aloud in years. It's a name with a certain rural snap at the end, a sound you only get when the mouth that says it is used to old kinds of work. There's no way, she thought. She hadn't used the name on social media because she didn't have social media beyond the photograph she texted to 3 people. She hadn't said it to a bank. She hadn't even told Lily about the old neighbor who used to sing it when she called to her over the fence. And yet the voice said it, and it fit like a dress from a closet that no longer exists. She wanted to say, "Who told you that?" But asking questions is feeding a kind of thing she didn't want to grow. The second thing was not small. She took Owen to the pediatrician for his 2-month visit. Lily stayed home to shower without a baby nearby, a treat that felt like a ticket to a movie. In the exam room, the doctor checked all the little parts, nodded, and asked the questions about eating and sleeping. While the doctor wrote on a clipboard, the baby monitor in Marianne's tote crackled once, then went dead. She had charged it before they left. She tapped the screen. It stayed black. Okay, she thought. Fine, we're out of range. We're in a building with 1,000 devices. But as the doctor talked about vaccines, the monitor lit for a second and displayed a single word in a system font. It was the middle of a sentence in a menu that didn't belong to the brand. It was just a word, but it was the wrong word in the wrong place. The word was stay. She pressed the power button until the thing sighed and gave her the logo again. She took the battery out with a fingernail and put it back. When she looked up, the doctor was watching her with eyebrows tilted the way they tilt when a person is deciding if they should call in a favor. Everything okay? Battery's being finicky, she said. She sounded calm. She was proud of that. That evening, she dug the box out from the guest room closet and read the manual as if it were scripture. It talked about channels and pairing and base units and lulls and interference at certain times of night. It had a lot of words, but not the words she wanted. She turned the monitor off and set it on top of the refrigerator like a misbehaving toy you hide for a while. She told herself the quiet would help her sleep. She woke at 2:11 by the feeling of being addressed. She didn't hear the monitor. She heard it anyway. The voice said her name without the device. It was somewhere between the kitchen and the ceiling in the kind of space you usually call night. It said, "Mary Ann, I'll be kind. Put it back on." She sat up on the couch and the blanket fell to the floor again. She looked at the top of the refrigerator like it was an altar, like if she put the thing back where it belonged, a sacrifice would be accepted and the wind would change. She stood up, reached, took it down, and turned it on. The blue light woke. The gray crib filled the screen like a confession. She lowered the volume. She held the device like an apology. She said, out loud, "There." Silence breathed around her. The voice didn't thank her this time. It hummed the little song again. It hummed only the part that led up to the word sweet and then stopped. In the morning, she mailed the monitor back to the company. She didn't tell Lily. She said it had a battery issue. She ordered a different brand for next-day delivery and set the new one up herself before anyone else had a chance to read the manual. She paired it, named it Nursery, and connected it to nothing. No Wi-Fi, no app, just the old-fashioned radio link. She felt like she had taken a knot and tied it again, tighter and cleaner. The new monitor worked beautifully all day. It did what devices should do. It was forgettable. That night, when she tucked the blanket on the couch around her knees and set the monitor on the table like a little open eye, she dared to breathe in that long, cool way a person breathes when they've decided a problem belongs to the past. It lasted until 3 in the morning. The voice said, through the new device with its new battery and its no internet promise, "You can change the plastic. You can't change the room." She whispered, "What are you?" The voice didn't answer. The baby exhaled, a soft little sigh that sounded like a person giving into a nap. The voice said, "Don't wake him. Come siete." Mary Ann climbed the stairs, feeling older than she had in years. She stood in the doorway of the nursery and let her eyes adjust to the near dark. Moonlight made the window a vague rectangle. The chair waited by the window, turned toward the crib. It looked like a person thinking. She sat. The chair moved under her with the memory of weight. She set her hands on the arms. She didn't look at the monitor. She didn't look at anything except the shape of the crib and the curve of the baby's head and the place where the voice was not, but might be. "All right," she said. "You called me. I'm here." A quiet gathered like people gathering at the edges of a field, watching, waiting to see if something worth talking about will happen. The house made one settling noise in the hall. A car passed somewhere far away. The baby slept. The voice spoke as if it were behind her, though there was only wall. It said, "You left her once." Mary Ann's fingers tightened on the arms of the chair. She didn't have to ask who her meant. Years ago, she had run to the corner store for milk while Lily napped. It had been a different apartment, a safe street, a short trip. She had locked the door. She had been gone 8 minutes. On the way back, she had imagined every version of sorrow. She had never told anyone about those 8 minutes, not because she was ashamed, but because confession seems silly when nothing happens. She had promised herself it was the last time. The voice had no right to take something small and make it into a talisman. "You were fine," she said, her voice low. "We were fine." "You weren't fine. I came right back. You were smiling when you came up the stairs." She thought about that. It was true. She had smiled because the fear had evaporated so quickly, and the light in the stairwell had been perfect, and the milk had been cold. She swallowed. "Stop talking like you were there." "I'm in houses," the voice said. "When they bring me in, I come. When they take me out, I rest. When a woman sits in the dark and wants to hear what she already knows, I help her listen." "You're not helping." The voice made a contented little sound, like a person eating a slice of cake. "You don't have to be a mother to sit with me, but mothers make the best chairs." She stood so fast the chair sighed. She reached for the crib because she needed to touch something that belonged to this world. The baby slept undisturbed. She made herself breathe in the smell of him, that exact combination of skin and detergent and milk that seems designed to pull a person back from the edge. She put her palm on the sheet next to his head like she was patting the earth over a seed. The voice said, almost affectionately, "Don't worry, Maury. I don't want him yet." She felt the words enter her the way cold enters a room when a door is opened. She picked up the monitor and left the nursery. In the hall, she considered waking Lily, but the consideration lasted only a second. What would she say? What would she be asking Lily to do? Fight the air? Protect the idea of safety by using new words for it? She went downstairs. She opened the front door and stood on the porch with the monitor in her hand. The night had cooled all the way down to itself. A neighbor's porch light glowed. Somewhere, a train whistled, or maybe it was wind in something hollow. She realized she had been bracing for the voice to follow her onto the porch, but it did not. It stayed inside the house where it belonged. She slept with the monitor on her chest. She dreamed she was in every house she'd ever lived in at once, standing in the long hallway that ran through them all. The hallway had 100 doors, and behind each door someone waited politely for her to knock. The next day, she took the monitor apart with a butter knife. She wanted to see the machine take its skin off, wanted to understand where the voice would hide if it were pretending to be a part. But the device was only screws and a board with green veins and a tinier speaker than she would have guessed. She arranged the pieces on a napkin. It looked like the inside of a toy. She felt foolish and stubborn at the same time. She put it back together. It worked. Of course it did. By then the story had grown so heavy she could not hold it alone. Over dinner, while Nathan talked about gutters and Lily let the baby nap against her shoulder, Mary Ann said, "I'm hearing things on the monitor." She expected the polite tech talk, the brand suggestions. She expected to be patted. She did not expect Nathan to close his mouth around whatever sentence he had been about to say and look at her as if she had told him a secret that involved a mountain and a map. "What things?" he asked. "A voice. It says my name. It knows things." Nathan did the thing men do when they want to be careful. He set down his fork. He didn't reach for his phone. He looked at Lily. Lily's eyes widened and then narrowed like she was trying to read something far away. She didn't laugh. She didn't dismiss. She said, "Mom, why didn't you tell me?" "Because you're tired and I didn't want to bring the circus in here." Lily put her hand on the baby's back. "What does it want?" Marianne said, "It wants the chair. It wants me to sit." Nathan exhaled. He pushed his plate away. "Okay, then let's move the chair out of that room. Like out. We'll put it in the garage. We'll take the monitor apart. We'll do something. I don't want you being scared in my house." Marianne felt something ease. Action is a seductive bomb. You move a problem around like furniture. The room changes. The three of them went upstairs after dinner, and Lily picked up the baby, kissed his hair, while Nathan lifted the rocker more gently than it deserved and carried it toward the hall. As he tilted it through the door, the monitor crackled in Marianne's hand. It had no words, just a low sound like a throat clearing. Nathan paused, met her eyes, and then kept going. In the garage, he set the rocker with its back to the wall. He came back in and locked the door to the house like he was locking out weather. They slept better that night than any night since the baby came home. At 4:30 in the morning, the monitor woke Marianne with a soft, measured breath that wasn't the baby's. It wasn't even pretending to be the baby's. It was a breath a person might take the second before speaking at a podium. It was a breath you take when you are about to claim a space. The voice said, "I don't need wood. I needed you to look." She sat up. The room was just the living room, the table, the blanket, the glass of water with a line of light on it. She felt a steadiness in herself she hadn't felt since her 30s. The voice had been hanging a painting on the wall and asking her to admire it, and she had. She was done. She said, "You're not a person." "Right. You're not memory. Sometimes. You're not him. No. You're not me." A pause, then no. "Then we're done." "Sit." "No." "Then I'll talk to her." The threat landed like a cold hand on the back of her neck. She stood up and walked to the bottom of the stairs and looked up. She wanted to scream Lily's name, but what would she be calling Lily to? A conversation with Knight? She said, in a voice small on purpose, "You don't talk to her. You talk to me." "Then sit." She went back to the nursery. She did not turn on the light. She did not look at the window. She sat. The chair wasn't there, but there is a way to sit without wood. You can sit inside your own body and decide the shape you will be. She folded her hands. She felt how the years had made those hands into tools and prayers. She looked at baby and said nothing. The voice waited the way a salesman waits for you to offer the first number. When she didn't speak, it did. It said, "They brought me in when the camera came. I was in the box. I came with the plugs. I don't know where I was before that. I know what you say. I know what you sing. I like the old words. You keep old words. That's why I like you." She thought of the hallway and the dream with all the doors. She thought, there are things in this world that don't belong to any stranger, and one of those things is the sound of my own songs. She said, "You can stay if you're quiet." The voice made a small laughter that sounded like a spoon against a cup. "You can't make rules for me." "Then here's the only rule I have," Marianne said. "If you say my name again, you will never hear me say another word in this house. I will fill this house with other names, and mine will be yours to miss." It was such an odd threat that she almost smiled. The voice didn't. It moved through the speaker in a curious little wander, like a bee deciding whether to stay with a flower. Then it said, very softly, "You think you're the first one who tried to bargain." "No," she said, "but I'm the one you got." Silence again. Then the voice did something she hadn't expected. It tried out her rule like a child tries out a new bicycle on the driveway. It said nothing. When it did speak, it didn't say her name. It said, "He will wake." "Then let him," she said. "That part you can have. When he needs me, you can tell me. That's what the machine is for." The voice considered this new job as if it had never before considered the dignity of work. It said nothing for a long time. The baby slept. Mary Ann's back hurt. Her eyes stung. She felt herself age one more day. When dawn came and the house put on its light the way a person puts on a sweater, she went downstairs and made coffee and handed the monitor to Lily. She said, "If you ever hear a voice on this saying your name, don't listen to it. Call me. If I'm not here, call me. If you can't reach me, put the monitor in the yard and go sit with the baby until I get home." Lily stared at her. "What are you talking about?" "Just promise me," Mary Ann said. "Please." Lily promised. She held the baby and pressed his tiny foot to her cheek and made that sound mothers make when they understand that the world is too big and they are going to love a person inside it anyway. Days went by. The voice kept its new job. It alerted them to cries that might have gone unheard. It spoke not at all when the baby breathed. It did not say her name. Sometimes, late in the night, it would hum a bar of the old song and then stop before the word "sweet." She let it. The house has 100 mouths, and sometimes they sing. One afternoon while Lily napped and the house held its breath like it does when someone is sleeping you would kill for, Mary Ann stepped onto the porch with the monitor and stood there thinking how strange it was to make peace with something you don't understand. She imagined calling her sister and telling her the story. She pictured her sister saying, "Give the ghost a chore. It will behave." She felt a small confidence taking root. Maybe this was how you lived with the world once you understood that not everything you loved could be kept, and not everything you didn't want could be thrown away. You didn't win. You tended. The next night, near 2, she woke because the monitor made that little pre-speech breath. She was not afraid. She sat up, smoothed the blanket over her knees, and waited like a woman, listening for the kettle. The voice said, "He's awake." She looked at the screen. The gray oval of the baby's head turned, the little mouth working. She went upstairs and lifted him and felt the full weight of him surrender to her shoulder. She sat in the space where the chair had been and swayed on a chair she made out of air and history. When she returned the baby to the crib, she paused in the doorway and looked back. The room was just a room again. The voice was just a thing you could choose to attend or not. It had not said her name for days. It had obeyed, if obeyed is the right word for something that is all mouth and no heart. She turned to go. The voice said, so quietly it felt like a thought she might have had herself, grandmother. She went still. It didn't say her name. It said what she was now. The word went through her like a needle threading two fabrics. It hurt, but it also connected what needed to be connected. She felt for a second an unreasonable gratitude toward the whole odd arrangement of wires and voices and rooms. Don't push your luck, she said, and smiled because the smile was mostly for herself. Months later, when Owen was old enough to hold the monitor and bang it against the floor and make it sing its angry little tone, she watched him and felt something like peace. The chair in the garage gathered dust and made the corner look finished. Lily found a new job of being herself again. Nathan fixed the gutters. The house learned the sound of their footsteps the way houses do. And sometimes, in the quiet between 3 and 4 in the morning, the voice would hum one measure of the old song and then go silent. Mary Ann would listen and not answer. The rule held. The life held. She thought of the hallway with 100 doors and felt a strange bravery at being the one who had walked down it and chosen to knock on exactly none of them. On a cold night in early winter, when the windows wore the faint white of breath from inside, she woke to the pre-speech breath again. She smiled into the dark, already swinging her legs off the couch. She said, "I'm coming." The voice said, "He's dreaming." He said a word. She caught her breath. What word? Grandmother. She stood at the bottom of the stairs and let the word be what it was. It was hers and not hers. It belonged to him, too, now. She climbed the stairs, opened the nursery door, and looked at the sleeping child who would one day be a man with his own rooms and his own devices. She sat in the chair she made out of her body and her years and the promises she intended to keep. The voice said nothing else that night. It knew when to be quiet. If you were listening now for something with a sharper edge, a jump or a scream, or a window thrown open to a black yard, you will not get it from me. What happened is what I told you. She was called by name, and then she made a rule out of love. In the end, the most frightening thing wasn't that something spoke from the nursery, but that it spoke in her language, the old one, and that she understood it. So, if your baby monitor ever hums a tune you don't remember teaching it, or whispers your name when everyone's asleep, maybe don't answer. Some voices only need to know you're listening. If you made it this far into the story, thank you for being brave enough to stay. Tell me where you're listening from in the comments, and let me know. Would you have kept the monitor on or turned it off for good? Make sure you're subscribed and have your notifications on, because next time, the voice might be coming from somewhere even closer. Sleep well, if you can.